And humans have specific transporters for ergothionein. And
So,
so when we eat the mushroom, ergothionein is easily absorbed into the bloodstream. And these transporters that we have only bind to ergothionein. And researchers have looked into this and seen if there's any other compounds. It's like ergothionein looks similar to glutathione and works similar to glutathione, another
mhm.
antioxidant in the body. Glutathione does not bind to these transporters. And ergothionein is basically only found in mushrooms and like blue-green algae. And so it's just this really cool example of how we've evolved with mushrooms. And we have
Yeah,
these transporters for a compound in mushrooms that then, once it gets into our system, is helping us with detoxification processes and works as an antioxidant and is really protective for the human body.
hi there. I'm Govind Nair, and I welcome you to the Mushroom Rice podcast, where we bring you scientific information on health and fitness. And today we are very honored to have with us Dr. Anna Sitkoff, who is a neuropathic doctor and a researcher. She's also very much interested in botanical medicine, and she's also an applied mycologist. So, Dr. Anna Sitkoff, thank you very much for being with us on this show. Um, and I hope that, thank you for, being here and sharing willing to share your insights with us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Uh, so I'd like start off, you have mentioned in your on your website and blog, like how you started off in this your interest in medicinal mushrooms because of your during your father's cancer treatment. Uh, what I would like to ask you is during that time, how was it when you found out about the medicinal properties of this mushrooms? How was your feeling that time? Were you super excited? Were you like, oh wow? Or then were you and then how did you go about it? What are the next steps you did, that got you to where you are?
Yeah, so I always had an interest in natural medicine, and I was studying nutrition and herbal medicine. And then when my father was diagnosed with leukemia and he saw a Chinese medical doctor and they prescribed this mushroom blend, I was surprised that it was kind of like the first time that mushrooms were really coming up um, in my learning about natural medicine. It's like they'd come up a little bit like with nutrition. It's like I knew that, eating shiitake mushrooms was good for the immune system. I knew that um, mushrooms generally had health properties, but in all of my herbal medicine training, it's like my herbal teachers kind of avoided the concept of mushrooms and teaching about mushrooms. And so
Yeah.
after he was prescribed this mushroom formula, I got very curious and interested. And since it didn't seem like my teachers in my life were going to be the ones to educate me about mushrooms and their healing properties, I just kind of took it upon myself to dive into the research. And, as they say, it's the best things to teach about are the things you want to know about. And so I actually started teaching a lot of classes on mushrooms. Um, and at the time, I was working at an apothecary, and I had the opportunity to teach about whatever I wanted, really. And so I really went into my first mushroom class with the goal of I'm like, this is going to be the best mushroom class anyone's ever taken. And so I really did a lot of research, and then just the more I learned, the more inspired I got, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, which is like
Right.
mushroom heaven.
Yes.
And so then my kind of like classroom mushroom classes turned into forest mushroom classes, and we would go out and really spend time with the mushrooms and understand them in their natural environment, collect the mushrooms, make extracts. And so it went from, I think, an interest in like how mushrooms impact physiology into how do we kind of get to know the mushrooms, how they are in nature, and then what are the best ways to extract the medicinal properties out of the mushrooms. So kind of getting to know them on all of the different levels. And I found that to be super helpful for definitely in teaching people about mushrooms. It's like just kind of talking to them with a slideshow doesn't have the same impact as going out in the forest and finding them and collecting them and chopping them and boiling them.
Right. Right, right. That's so super interesting, that journey. And actually, I should have mentioned the introduction that like you are an educator. You really like to talk to people about mushrooms, and you really like to, yeah, get that knowledge out there. I think that's really your passion shows on your blog. So based on that, like, could you tell us, like something that is like about some medicinal mushroom, something that is so fascinating that I think like you think people should know about this. Like this is awesome, something.
Um, I think, yeah, I talk about this a lot whenever I'm interviewed. And so for people who have heard me talk before, they'll be like, of course, she's talking about ergothionein, but I'll just talk about it because this is our first time talking. And
Right.
yeah, so I think well, there's so many interesting things, but one of the most interesting things that I've learned in the last few years about mushrooms is this amino acid ergothionein that
Right.
is found in abundance in oyster mushroom, also in shiitake, but really it's most present in oyster mushroom, a Pleurotus species.
Right.
And humans have specific transporters for ergothionein. And
So
so when we eat the mushroom,
right.
ergothionein is easily absorbed into the bloodstream. And these transporters that we have only bind to ergothionein. And researchers have looked into this and seen if there's any other compounds. It's like ergothionein looks similar to glutathione and works similar to glutathione, another
Hmm.
antioxidant in the body. Glutathione does not bind to these transporters. And ergothionein is basically only found in mushrooms and like blue-green algae. And so it's just this really cool example of how we've evolved with mushrooms. And we have
Yeah.
these transporters for a compound in mushrooms that then, once it gets into our system, is helping us with detoxification processes and works as an antioxidant and is really protective for the human body.
Yeah, and it's like really fascinating because ergothionein was discovered like almost like more than 100 years back actually, and it was only in like I think early 2000s that they're like, oh, there are transporters, like, but can you tell us like these transporters they are like in the blood, right? And so when you eat mushrooms, ergothioneins are like absorbed in your stomach and it goes in your
Yes.
bloodstream and is taken somewhere.
Yeah, so the transporters are located in a number of different places in the body. And so it's called the OCT-N1 transporter. And is actually present in a lot of tissues that are prone to a lot of oxidative stress or
Wow.
kind of like damage. And so some interesting places where these transporters are like the seminal vesicles. So the ergothionein probably plays a role in like detoxification of sperm, perhaps. Um, and
Right.
it's also present in the brain, and so
So several
ergothioneine can
vesicles are where the
easily.
where the semen is like stored, right? Or is it one that where it's produced?
No, seminal vesicles are more up towards the prostate.
Ah, right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. So, and then there's octin-1 transporters in the kidneys and in the heart, just a number of different tissues in the body that where you would want there to be extra protection from oxidative damage. And so usually we have glutathione. And so we use our glutathione, and when there is extra oxidative stress, say you're kind of living in an environment where there's a lot of smoke or something like that, or a lot of
Right.
pollution, then you want a backup system to glutathione. And
Right.
ergothionein can actually, once it's taken up into the cells, it can be stored for, I think the research says like up to a month or something. And so it kind
Mm.
of acts as this like backup antioxidant system in the body.
Right. That's super interesting. That's like really one of the information is like, hey, why don't we like I don't know
Yeah,
if there are like so many receptors like for ergothioneine. It's like why aren't we, like eating more mushrooms, and like that leads me to my
exactly.
yeah
Yeah,
next question. It's like eating mushrooms is like and forget about using it as medicine in general. It's like it's a little strange, it's like out of the ordinary, not in East Asia or something, but definitely in UK and out in America here. And like people who talk about mushrooms are also like a bit of the weird category, and uh, it's strange to me. If you think about it a bit, it's strange because then most of our medicines have come from plants, and then like after discovery of antibiotics, it's like a huge amount of medicines from fungi, and then like it should be natural that like normal to even think that, oh yeah, it's good, for you, but that's not the case. Like so, can you talk about that? Like, do you think it is changing, and like because it's essential, right? You have the scientific evidence to back it up and all, right? So is
yeah.
it changing? Can it be changed?
I think it's kind of interesting right now where there's like been this huge mushroom boom over the last few years, and it's become like kind of a very popular like lifestyle, not even a medicine, but like everyone's not calling them medicinal mushrooms, but functional mushrooms. It's like part of functional medicine, and it's in a lot of like
Right.
coffee products and protein bars. And I think that that has actually been not like the most helpful for the argument of like using mushrooms as like they are medicinal and they can be used as medicine for specific conditions, and they do impact human physiology, and having them in like little amounts or like random combinations in all of these products because people think that if they add some like functional mushrooms to their product it'll sell better. I think that some people in the more like allopathic medical community see them as just like a trend,
Right.
kind of because of that. I think that in the more like natural medicine sphere, I see a lot of herbalists and people who maybe weren't using mushrooms as much before are getting more comfortable with using mushrooms and talking about mushrooms. Um, and there is, a fair amount of clinical trials, but not nearly enough to be
Right.
like that
Yeah.
convincing to the greater medical community, at least in North America. But I do have a lot of cancer patients who, of course, are also in the care of an oncologist, and I'm always prescribing mushrooms. And they're talking to their oncologist about it, and I'd say that 99% of the time, that oncologist is very open to it. And they're like, yeah, sure, like mushrooms are great. Do what your naturopath says with the mushrooms. It's like they know that they're not the mushroom expert, but there's enough evidence to suggest that they'll be helpful and they're not going to interfere with most cancer treatments. So I am noticing that in that sphere, at least, medical professionals are more open to it. Um, but as far as the like general allopathic primary care doctor, I think that their understanding of mushrooms and view is still kind of like, oh, that's just like another health trend without any scientific evidence. So yeah, it depends. Depends how open-minded people are. But at least with naturopathic medicine, I think a lot of my colleagues are getting more interested in using them with their patients, and I have a lot more people coming to me and asking me like, what are the best products to use? What should I be looking for? What are the right doses and that kind of thing.
But that's great to hear because like I mean it should start somewhere, right? And if some group of people who are like uh, I mean are a part of the medical community and they accept it as a part like complementary to the uh, like how the regular treatment is. That itself is a great start. But I agree with you that like there is a lot of misinformation out there about mushrooms and it's there in this functional foods and everything. But I mean, I'm sure you get this question a lot. You just mentioned it, but it's like, what would you say, to someone who is like, they heard about mushrooms, and they are like thinking, hey, it can be like, I could use it to help me, in some way, because you hear people saying, yeah, like I couldn't sleep, and now I can sleep better after taking so and so mushrooms, something like that, or I feel more energetic, my brain fog has disappeared. So then people are looking at that and like, hey, I have that condition. Maybe I should take mushrooms. What would you? Yeah, that's what happens, I guess. People have some issue and then they go to mushrooms. It's not like,
Yeah.
or somebody tells them. So anyway, so what would you tell someone like that? What should their approach be to the whole field?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing is that not all mushroom products are created equal.
Right,
And so usually, let's just say an example. So somebody is looking for immune support during the winter months. And so they buy a mushroom, or it says on the label, like mushroom coffee. And then it lists like 10 different types of fungi.
right,
And then, so they're like, great. And then you look at the label and it has all of these different mushroom species, and then it says that they're mycelium.
right,
And then it on the like other ingredients it says like brown rice
right.
or brown rice biomass.
Yeah, yeah,
And then nowhere on the label does it say extract,
right.
right? And
Yeah,
so that I'd say would be a bad way to improve the immune system. And so, yeah, and so that's just like an example of what not to look for, obviously. And so when somebody would say, I want to improve my immune system through the winter months, I'd say, well, look for maybe a combination of no more than 3 mushrooms. Otherwise, it's just diluted.
great.
And you want those mushrooms to be extracts because if you're just taking whole powdered mushrooms, our body's not going to be able to absorb the beta glucans without the chitin being melted, which is the chitin is that outer cell wall of the
Yes,
mushrooms.
yeah,
Um, and so you want no more than 3 mushrooms, and you want it to be an extract, and you want it to say mushroom.
right.
Mushroom being the above ground portion of the fungus that we see with our naked eye.
The fruiting body.
Um, and exactly, the fruiting body. And in other ingredients, you don't want to see any biomass or grain present. And so that would be kind of my first guidelines is like powdered mushroom or fruiting body extract and not like a
Right,
kitchen sink mushroom formula with 10 different mushrooms. And then my next piece of
right,
advice would be to take that extract just with a big glass of water on an empty stomach.
Hmm.
It's like we want those active compounds,
Right.
those, I mean, there's so many more active compounds than just the beta glucans or polysaccharides, but for the sake of immune support, we'll just talk about those. We want those to be able to get the most surface area in the intestines to come into contact with
Hmm.
the gut associated lymphoid tissue. And
Right.
if you're taking those mushrooms with food, that's going to decrease the surface area. There's going to be less binding to the receptors in your gut lymphoid tissue. Um, if you are mixing that powder with coffee or blending it with coffee, there's risk of the beta glucans or the polysaccharides binding with the tannins, and then you're
Right.
not having the right molecule basically anymore that you want going through the intestines.
Right.
Um, so yeah, empty stomach, big glass of water, powdered mushroom extract.
Great.
And yeah, that's like a good place to start.
Yeah, that's awesome information, and thank you so much for telling that. And actually, like I think our time is like almost up, right? But like before I let you go, like if you can tell,
Oh,
like,
so 11:30 my time.
oh, your time, okay, yeah, okay, that's like okay,
Yeah,
we still
we've
have a
got time.
long time. Oh, we got time, awesome. I was like, hey, let's hurry, baby, go. Okay, every time, yeah, this happens. This is yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
Mountain. Okay, okay. That's I was in a hurry. Okay, then we like relax and uh,
Yeah.
take a step
Yeah.
back. Okay, I was like going to rush you through the whole questions, like because I was like, okay, I got like 1 minute left.
Oh yeah, we're good.
Okay. Um. So like another thing related to that, like okay, so would you say that is like the biggest misconception like which people have about medicinal mushrooms, like is that they think if the mushroom is there in something, it's it's good to go. But
Mhm.
but what you're saying is no, like all the information you gave right now. So that's would that be the biggest misconception, or are there any other misconceptions about?
Yeah, I think that that is one for sure. It's like they assume that because yeah, there's like a little bit of lion's mane in their protein bar, then they're getting the benefit of lion's mane. Which it's like some protein bars out there do actually have like 2 grams of lion's mane powdered extract, and that's
Wow.
great.
Yeah. Awesome.
But for the most part, you're not going to get that therapeutic dose. Um, so, um, yeah, that would be a misconception that just like having the mushrooms in a product is going to have a medicinal impact. Another one would be that mushroom, when it says mushroom on a label, that there's actually mushrooms in the product, which of course you would think that that's true
Right.
because you expect what the label says to be true to what is in the product. But oftentimes it is actually the mycelium or the like underground or within the part of the fungal organism that's usually within the wood or underneath the ground that is found in a lot of mushroom products because one, it's a lot cheaper to produce. You don't have to wait for the fungus to actually fruit.
Right. Yeah.
And what is also true, which is like this whole other conversation, is that a lot of those mycelium products, since you can't just like separate out all of the mycelium from the substrate that it's growing on, substrate
Right.
being it's usually grain like brown rice, sorghum, or oat, you can't separate it out. So then when companies are powdering it, it ends up being at least half grain.
Oh wow.
And then there's like half mycelium. So it's like, as one of my mentors, Jeff Chilton, likes to say, it's tempeh, basically.
Right. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
It's
It
powdered
is. Yeah.
tempeh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so really, yeah, reading the label when you're looking for true mushroom products. Yeah, and then I think maybe another misconception would be that more is better. I think that it is true that when you have more than one mushroom in a formula, it does seem to have a stronger impact on the immune system. There is a synergy with mushrooms. They are community organisms,
Right.
but how much more is better? I'd say like I said previously, having 10 different mushrooms in a formula, and so you're getting like a few milligrams of each or something like that.
Right.
You're not going to be getting the medicinal impact of the individual mushrooms, because each individual mushroom has its own qualities and its own roles in a formula. And so if you're just diluting them all, I don't think you're getting very much from any of them.
Right.
And then I guess another misconception would be that mushrooms are only for the immune system. It's like
Uh-huh.
I love to
Right.
play this game where it's like name a body system, and I can tell you about a mushroom and its impact on that body system and a role that it plays that would be surprising. So yeah.
So I want to take you up on that challenge actually.
Okay, okay, let's see.
Let's see like would you come up with like uh, how about receptors or like tongue, your taste. Uh, so
Uh-huh.
your tongue has like all these receptors for taste and all
Ooh, this
that,
is a
right?
good
So,
one. Yeah.
so I was just
Okay.
thinking, is there something for that?
Yeah, okay. So, mushrooms are bitter for the most part. I mean, they're like umami, but a lot of the, if you think about like the flavor of like a strong reishi tea, it's pretty
Right.
bitter.
Yeah.
And so the bitter receptors in the back of the tongue. And so when you taste that bitter flavor, it actually stimulates the vagus nerve, which is
Uh-huh.
our main like parasympathetic nerve. And so it stimulates vagus.
It's also the longest nerve in your body, right?
Yep, yep. And so through that stimulation, and part of that too is that vagus like comes down on the left hand side, it like wraps around the heart, comes back up and innervates and becomes the recurrent laryngeal nerve. And so it's all like very close to each other back there. So it
Right.
stimulates vagus, and then it can stimulate the parasympathetic, more like rest and digest response. And so that's why people say like take bitters to help to stimulate digestive enzymes and stomach acid and improve digestion overall.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can use that bitter flavor to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system and improve digestion.
Awesome. That's awesome. Like I was thinking, what like that's really like cool to hear that thing. Uh, Good to know that. Like I did not know about these connections of nerves here, and it makes sense. But like based on that, what I'd like to know is that like one more question. Like, sorry, you did not like come here to be challenged. I know you just said that,
Oh
but
no, it's fun. I just told you I like to play this game. Yeah, it's a good challenge.
yeah,
Always a good
yeah.
challenge.
I don't feel like stopping, so just I want to continue that game. But so it's like,
Yeah.
do you think like, or do you know about any connections between uh, like medicinal mushrooms or any other botanicals and your microbiome in your gut? Because you can think of microbiome also as kind of like an organ, right? It's like has a very strong role to
Hmm.
play in your overall health, and
Hmm.
so that's yeah. It'll be great to know something about that.
Yeah, so the polysaccharides found in medicinal mushrooms are prebiotics. And so
Yeah.
what that means is that they feed the bacteria in the gut. Um, or yeah, prebiotics feed the probiotics. And then those bacteria produce postbiotics like short chain fatty acids, like
Right.
butyrate. Um, and so I would say the greatest impact that the mushrooms have on the gut microbiome is by acting as food for the good bacteria in our
Hmm.
gut.
Why are they able to do that? Like, Is it like because like they are, I mean, yeah, why are they yeah
Well,
able to do that? Like,
well, it's like any food that has polysaccharides or starches, that's all prebiotic. It's just what the bacteria eats.
but like something like the polysaccharides in mushrooms are like really large in size, right?
Yeah.
These molecules. So does
Yeah.
that have a because yeah, starch is like even just tempeh or I don't know like rice or anything, right? So
Yeah.
is there a
Yeah.
difference like in the size of these molecules? Because yeah, the
Yeah.
larger they are, the binding would be more. I don't, yeah,
Yeah. So the polysaccharides found in mushrooms are a different kind of beta glucan than the polysaccharides found in like rice or oats.
right.
Right. They bind to different carbons. Um, but the way that, yeah, the way that they are like feeding the bacteria um, seems more similar to the way that other kinds of like prebiotics, like inulin, would feed the bacteria.
Hmm.
I'm not 100% like I don't really know the answer to this question. This is me just like postulating like how because I don't know like why the certain makeup of the beta glucans in mushrooms tends to like feed the bacteria, whereas maybe other kinds of starch compounds like don't increase numbers of like lactobacillus or bifidobacterium in the same way.
Right.
Um, I'm not sure. There's research on PSP or polysaccharide peptide
Yeah. Right.
that is extracted from the mycelium of turkey tail, and that has shown that it does increase certain populations of good bacteria in the gut
Hmm.
and also
Right.
the vaginal microbiome, which is pretty
Hmm.
cool.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess certain bacteria just like to eat certain polysaccharides, and mushrooms tend to have those polysaccharides. But I'm not a microbiome expert, and so I don't really know much more.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, but you get to see all these cool things happening, right? Like we talked about ergothionein, and now about this polysaccharides being beneficial to the gut microbiome. So you see all these connections where these molecules produced by fungi like are so useful like have so many like effects positive effects in the human body and then like I mean we know some of them maybe we don't know so much more but then it's like really it'll be good to wonder about like how this would why this is there, right? Like I
Of
think
course.
like I
Yeah.
think our ancestors would have been eating a lot of mushrooms because they're there, right? They're not running away. They're edible. They're there. So you eat it. It makes sense, right? And yeah, you forage, right? The foragers, like ancestors were foragers. They would forage for mushrooms. Makes sense. And so what are your thoughts on that? Like this connections you see everywhere, so many mushroom molecules impacting human health, and as you said, like name an organ, that game you play, like why is that there, like it's a bit spiritual questions, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that it is, interesting that mushrooms or like fungi generally are more similar to animals than they are to plants.
Right. Yes.
And I think that, it's a lot of people are talking about all of the like anti-nutrients in plants, especially in the like carnivore diet world and paleo world. It's like there's a lot of anti-nutrients in plants, and it's like mushrooms don't have those.
Right.
Mushrooms um, are, as long as you're cooking them, and I think that, yeah, I mean, we're we're similar to them. We are, um, I don't know. I mean, like, why do humans do anything? It's like some humans started eating mushrooms at some point and then carried on. Or, or
Right.
saw an animal eating a certain mushroom and saw the way that that animal responded to the mushroom and then
Yeah.
started eating that mushroom. Maybe I don't understand your question entirely.
No, yeah. I
But
was just wondering about the like, yeah, like when you see all these connections, like
yeah.
when you see health, uh, like is it like sometimes you wonder, right? Like, wow, this is like so much, right? Like it's like I don't know. For
Yeah,
me,
well,
it's
I
a
think
kind
it's
of
just
wonder.
it's just a good example of that. I think that we everything is like so connected,
Right.
so connected, and humans have been, for the last however many hundred years, we've been kind of disconnecting ourselves from the natural world and natural medicines, and or thinking that we are, even though many of our drugs, like you said earlier, are just derived from natural
Right.
medicines. But yeah, I think it's just an example that we're all connected, and that for up until recently, humans have always just used plants and animals and mushrooms as medicine and as food, and there's really no escaping that ultimately, um, because we're all part of the same planet.
Yeah,
But
and yeah, that's a like nice segue into like because you actually like take students into the woods and all that. Like that's what you mentioned, right? You actually go out
Mhm.
into nature and forage and look at mushrooms. Um, why is that like? Why is that good? Well, what is about it that you love, and would you recommend like people to do
Yeah,
that?
I think that it's the only way to really understand an organism. It's like you can read all the studies you want about reishi mushroom, but you
Right.
will never really know reishi mushroom until you've met it. It's like reading about a person and thinking
Right.
that you know them and then
Right.
never like seeing them in the flesh. And I think understanding like the tree that the reishi grows on,
Right.
the smell of the reishi, the feeling of it, the texture, like what it looks like when you cut it in half, seeing that the spores end up on the surface of the mushroom because mushrooms have their own little like micro environments that they create when the spores are released, where they come
Right.
up to the top of the mushroom for wind to then sweep them away.
Mm-hmm.
It's like um, I think that it really changes the way that people experience the medicine of the mushrooms as well when they are meeting it out in the forest in its natural environment. You have another understanding of like the energetics of that being, right? It's like its own
Right.
organism.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think that we are like in a world right now that is like very disconnected from where our food comes from, where our medicine comes
Exactly. Yeah.
from. Um, and sometimes even just like being in the forest with the mushroom is the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
You don't always need to take it in to your body.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, and it's like I can tell you that reishi's bitter, but if you've never just like tasted reishi tea or, you know, licked the spores out in the forest or something like that, it's like it doesn't really hit in the same way. And I think
Uh-huh.
too, especially with students, you remember so much more when you are, if I'm like talking to you about reishi with reishi next to me in the forest rather than,
Right.
like I said earlier, like with some like slideshow or something, or um, or a little snippet of an abstract from a study on reishi mushroom. It's like that's so bland compared to the energy of the organism in your hands.
I get it. I get it. Can you like share with us any like anything like amazing, like in all your trips to the forest, anything like amazing that you came upon sometime? We already know that you licked spores of a mushroom in the wild, but other than that, like,
Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's always, I know I keep talking about reishi, but that seems to always be like the most special mushroom to find out in the forest. And here, where I am in the Pacific Northwest, it's Ganoderma organense that I'm usually seeing.
right.
Um, and it's not the like Ganoderma lucidum that most people are familiar with as reishi mushroom. But I'd say they're most likely pretty um, analogous as far as their medicinal value. And they look very similar as well. But yeah, there's this one spot where I used to go for reishi pretty often, and it was like there was always, it's like I wouldn't see it, and then there would be like a little, like something that would like lead me in a very specific direction. Like it always seems like it kind of would be like calling to me or
Beckoning, yeah,
something,
yeah.
or I'd like look down and then a frog would like jump in this specific way, and then I would look over there, and then there the reishi would be. Um, yeah, it seems like it's like a very kind of magical experience to be out in the kind of like dank woods searching for a giant, shiny red medicinal
Right.
mushroom that, you know, in Chinese medicine, it's like the mushroom of immortality. There's like a
Yeah,
lot
right.
of heaviness that comes with uh, that
Yeah,
mushroom. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's probably the
yeah,
most common experience that I
yeah.
have.
Yeah, like I like walking in the woods too, and I find mushrooms, and I like looking at everything, you know, the birds, animals,
Yeah.
all that. Maybe this comes as a strange question, but do you like there are like with plants, many times insects are associated. You know, certain insects live near certain
hmm
plants and all that. Uh, I haven't heard this anybody talk about that, but do you know anything about that? Or some insects
hmm
particularly associated with mushrooms and
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So there's a few things that come to mind. So one would be there's this mushroom Cryptoporus vulvatus, or the cryptic globe fungus. Have you heard of this?
I've heard of it. Yes,
Yeah, it's a really cool mushroom. It's technically a polypore, but it's like a closed system. Like it looks like a little globe. I often see it in like on pine trees, usually after there's been some kind of burn or something, but not always. But anyway, so this mushroom, it's closed, and so it releases its spores on the inside.
right. Yeah.
And so that mushroom is completely reliant on this like wood boring beetle to come and eat a hole through the mushroom and eats the tubes on the inside, and then it collects the spores on its body, and then it goes into a tree and inoculates that tree.
Wow.
And it's my understanding that that's basically the only way that this mushroom releases its spores, or is able to like move its spores from one place to the next.
Right. Right. That's super
So
interesting.
that's
It's
yeah.
yeah.
And then another thing that comes to mind with that question is that there's a volatile alcohol compound called octanol that mushrooms release after they've released their spores. Octanol is a compound that humans also have this compound. It's like what attracts mosquitoes a lot of the time. It attracts biting insects.
Right.
And so they use octanol in some like mosquito catching things.
Yeah,
But
perhaps.
one of the purposes I think that like mushrooms release octanol, the insects come and end up with the spores on their bodies and then go and fly around. Another way to spread spores.
Right.
But I'm sure that there's more than that, like more examples that I'm just not aware of. Because if you look at a mushroom in the wild, there's this whole ecosystem, right? It's like there's
Right.
often like insects between the gills or little like worms and things on
Wow. Yeah.
the
Okay.
Nilius. And yeah, I'm sure there's so many relationships there. But those are the two that I'm most aware of.
Yes, yes, yes. And actually, that like that with the moment you told me about the beetle, it reminded me of truffles, right? Which are like they release this very strong smell, and like the animals in the forest go dig them up, and then that's also spreading the
Yeah.
spores, right?
Yep.
You actually did like a research on the rosy polypore, right?
Uh-huh.
And like so, like I did not know about that. Like when I like was like.
Yeah, not a lot of people know about that
Yeah,
mushroom.
so I was going to like when I planned to interview you, but like I then I found that out. You did the research on that. Then I like looked it up. But can you talk about that? Like your research with Rosie, the polypore
Yeah.
identifying.
Yeah. So, Fomitopsis cagendari, the rosy polypore, um, we were looking at different extraction methods and how they impact the immune system. Um, and also like their cytotoxicity to different cancer cell lines. And so we did a hot water extract, which we, of course, expected that there would be, the water is what it's going to extract the beta glucans, which have an impact on the immune system kind of indirectly,
Mm-hmm.
where they're stimulating the natural killer cells and cytotoxic T cells
Right.
um, through interaction with the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. And so we expected to see certain cytokines being increased. We were looking at IL-12 specifically. And then with the alcohol extract, we expected more of the fat-soluble or alcohol-soluble compounds like the lanthanum triterpene glycosides
Right.
to be extracted there, and those have more of a direct cytotoxic effect on cancer cells,
Mm-hmm.
not through immune stimulation, but just more direct. And yeah, and so we tested a number of different cancer cell lines. We looked at lymphocytic leukemia and different breast cancer cell line. I believe that there's students at Bastyr that are continuing the research now as well. And
Cool.
um, yeah, my research advisor called almost 6 months ago at this point, asking if I would come and help them do the sock slit extraction, but I had just had a baby, and so
Oh,
I'm not up to date with their with the research right now. But basically, what we found was what we expected was that the aqueous extract, the water extract, did increase cytokines that would have an impact on natural killer cells and cytotoxic T cells and your main like anti-cancer, antiviral defenses.
mm-hmm.
And then the alcohol extract that we used a sock slit extraction for did have cytotoxic effect on all of the cancer cell lines that we tested, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I really hope that that research is being continued, and this conversation is reminding me that it's happening and that I should probably get in touch with them and see what's going on. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I think something that I talk about on my blog with this mushroom is like there's a lot of research on very specific mushrooms, and there are so many different species
Right.
that have really not been explored. And the main mushrooms that have the research are the ones that either have been used for, a very long time. So there's some
Hmm.
like historic data, and so then people are like, oh, well, it was used traditionally for this, so let's see if it is actually effective for that. And those mushrooms tend to be like turkey tail and reishi and mushrooms that are like really eye-catching.
Right. Yeah.
And then the rosy polypore, it has like, when it's young, it has this brief period of being eye-catching where it's like bright pink and it's really
Yeah.
pretty. And then it kind of just like turns black as it ages and is like one of those mushrooms that you just walk by and you're like, whatever, another like mushroom. And so there's like hardly any information on it.
Yeah.
So I really hope that more people do research on that mushroom and look into it. And yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, congratulations on like doing a work which is like still being, like people are working on that, and also like on becoming a mother. like,
Thanks.
yeah. Um, yeah, so that's like, uh, so that question like leads me to like asking like you actually this just mentioned, right? Like, so do you think there could be like many other mushrooms that are like unexplored, like because there are like, as you said, like it's like mushrooms similar to the Ganoderma with the similar compounds are present here in North America and the Pacific Northwest. uh, do you think that happening, like, okay, there were so many mushrooms traditionally used somewhere, but they don't grow in other regions of the world, so do you think that's a possibility of going out there and finding such mushrooms, or do
Oh,
you
of
think there are many
course.
many other unexplored mushrooms with yet unknown medicinal properties?
Of course. I'm sure. I'm sure there are. Yeah. But the question is like, what's the best use of time and resources?
Hmm.
And I think that like the mushrooms that we already know about, there's so much more to explore.
Right.
And like there's I think it would be a better use of resources to do more human clinical trials on the mushrooms that we already know about than going out and looking for new ones,
Right.
probably.
No, that makes sense. And like some human clinical trials are going on. I think turkey tails, there are
Hmm.
like two clinical trials going on right now or something in the United States, and then definitely there are many more university like research groups in universities working on the molecular level details of this.
Hmm.
What else do you think like is needed? Like, is this momentum enough? Like, do we like need to do more and quickly? Like, or do you think what else is needed? Like to bring this into the mainstream, I guess, the mushroom, like research on medicinal mushrooms.
Yeah, I think like definitely more human clinical trials that are actually using the mushroom and in mm, the right dosage.
Okay, so what you're saying is
Uh,
that like trials now, maybe that is not happening, right? Like some of the, even I've read papers where they are like they don't mention like what exactly was given, right?
exactly. They don't tell you exactly what was given, or the dosage seems like very small. Um, or yeah, I think there was like one paper that I was reading. This was a while ago. I don't even remember. But the product that they said they used, they said it was like the fruiting body, but then I looked up the product
Mm-hmm.
and it is not the fruiting body. And so it's like even like the researchers I think need to like know better like what they're doing, like what
Yeah.
they're looking for, and like they need to know more about like the yeah, the materials
Mm-hmm.
that they're using.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that there's also like certain like some research that's like proving that they're safe. And it's like we know that I think we have enough information on a lot of mushrooms that, like we know that they're safe.
Right.
I want to see an effect. It's like use a dosage that would actually show an effect.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, as you are aware, as like you did research, you have your PhD, it's like the time that it takes for research to be done and then for things to change in medical practice
Right. Yeah.
is like 10 to 20 years. It's like that turkey tail research that might be being done right now.
Yeah.
Like nobody's gonna know about that for like 20 years probably. Or like be actually like integrating that into their medical practice. And so, I mean, I really try to stay up to date with all of the most recent mushroom research and educate people and talk at conferences and educate other practitioners. I mean, that's like a huge goal of mine, and that's like why I created my medicinal mushroom supplement company, Lucida
Right.
Medicinals,
Yeah.
was because I wanted my colleagues to be prescribing mushrooms that were actually going to be effective for their patients. It's like too much of the time they're like, well, the research says that, you know, like reishi should help with this thing, but it's not doing anything. And it's like, well, it's because you're not using the right product or in the right combination. And so I really wanted to create like body system formulas that were at the right doses with the right combination of things for them to be effective. And for my colleagues to see that mushrooms do actually work.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to get to the question of your company, Lucida Medicals, like sometime, but down the line. But now that you mentioned it, like
Yeah.
you can tell us more about it. Like you mentioned your motivations, right, of starting that, but exactly what do you do? Who is this? Who are the medicines for? Do you deal with mostly with just the patients or with the other doctors as well? So, can you talk about?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So we use all powdered mushroom extracts. And right now we just have three formulas for lungs and brain and nerves and immune system. And the goal is to have a formula for every most body systems.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I said, the intention was really to have these formulas that were me really, even though me and my husband and a good friend of ours run the business together, but
Cool.
these formulas that I came up with based on historical use, human clinical trials, like all the most recent research, kind of combining all of this as evidence-based formulas for
Awesome.
people, so that my colleagues don't have to think about it and they're just like, oh, like Dr. Sitkoff came up with this formula. I trust her. I will use this. Because we all, I mean, as practitioners, it's like the time it takes to research like companies and just find new formulas, start trying new supplement companies. It's like most people just like have a company that they trust and go
Yeah.
with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be that mushroom company that people trust. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, and so the original intention was to sell to clinics and have this be more prescription oriented, and to be sold in dispensaries. And then I just felt like it wasn't reaching enough people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so we're doing more like direct to consumer as well, so that people who aren't just like going to their doctor can also have access to our formulas. And so that what that means is doing even more like education to the public, you know, about mushrooms and my hope is that the more experts there are in the medicinal mushroom space,
Mm-hmm.
the more then we will push other mushroom companies to be better and have higher quality products. And
Right.
hopefully kind of weed out the companies that are just like throwing mushroom biomass into a container and selling it as medicinal mushrooms.
For a very high price, right? That too, most of the time.
Yeah, for a very high price. Yeah. Yeah.
Like not only is the like a product not the product you want, it's also expensive. Um, yeah, that's like really cool to hear. But because you talked about education, uh, and like you have also been teaching courses and all, right? So it's like, do you think that there are enough mushroom related like or naturopathic? You said like you did not. There was no mushrooms in the course that you did not talk about mushrooms so much, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you think that needs to change as well?
Um, I think that it's starting to change. I think there's like a few mushroom education based people out there that are bringing good information. There's one in particular that I can't remember the name of right now. Um, but yeah, I think that it's hard with social media
Mm-hmm.
for people who don't know what information is the right information. There's like so many pseudo experts out there.
Right.
Um, and it's like how do you find the right information? And I like I said, I think that more like I know that my old like herbal teachers are probably now including more mushroom education than they were before. I, for a number of them, have actually just gone and taught the mushroom portion of
Oh
the
wow.
herbal medicine course. And so I know that that's um, one way that those people are getting their information. But yeah, I think in an ideal world where I have more time, I am more of a resource for mushroom information. You know, I think it's like before I had my medical practice, before I had a baby, I had my blog, which I still have my blog, but I was just like writing all the time. And I really
Yeah.
wanted it
I,
to be like the best source of mushroom information on the internet.
yeah.
And I still have that dream and of, you know, making like writing a book one day and just like really, I mean, books are hard these days because information is like changing so
So
quickly.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like once you've written it down, there's something else
So
to
do yeah.
say. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I don't know if there's like one good resource for mushroom information these days, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's getting better to answer your question. It's like very long-winded. Yes, I do think it's getting better. And there's
Yeah.
more to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good to hear. Like it's like moving in the right direction at least, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
I just wanted to we ask, like because this I guess would be something which people who are listening to this show would like. Like, so you talk about like diseases, right? Like mushrooms helping you. Like, does it also have a role in preventive medicine? Like, will consuming mushrooms help you prevent certain diseases?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like taking mushrooms every day to help keep your immune system strong will probably help to prevent a viral infection.
Mhm.
Will they help to prevent cancer? I don't know. Hopefully, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, it's like if we're using reishi to inhibit an enzyme that forms dihydrotestosterone and helping with like prostate hyperplasia symptoms, like if will taking reishi every day help to just prevent BPH or benign prostate hyperplasia from ever happening? Maybe. There's not really like enough, like there's not any data to tell us, you know?
Exactly.
It's like if
Yeah.
you're we don't know what you're preventing if it never happens.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
like
There's that conundrum, right? Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but there's yeah, I mean there's a lot of like postulation. It's like with the ergothionein, there's some really cool papers discussing the role that it might play in like preventing preeclampsia in pregnancy.
Right.
And I think that's so interesting. And there's not yeah, there's no like human clinical data that I'm aware of that is like this proved to prevent this disease.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like also with mushrooms that are modulating the immune system, are they helping to prevent autoimmune disease? Maybe. Again, how do you know that you're preventing something?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What we know is like the just the molecular mechanisms, right? Like it's especially the immune modulation.
Yeah.
So we can like probably say at least we know that like it's not harmful. Can you confirm that?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's like if you are stimulating like T regulatory cells on a regular basis, it's probably less likely that you will develop an autoimmune disease. Yeah. If you are like feeding your microbiome on a regular basis,
Yeah.
it's probably likely that you're preventing, I mean, the microbiome plays a role in so much in the human body, but preventing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got like just two more questions like before
Yeah.
I let you go. In
Okay.
your like blog, you talk about recipes, right? You talk about cooking, like or making things
Mhm.
food with uh, mushrooms. Can you share something which you really like, which you would like other people to try?
Well, I it's probably less about flavor and more about like utility, but
Mm-hmm.
like I think the best way to get any kind of like natural medicine into you, especially when it's like from plants or mushrooms, is to just like eat it and have it be a part of your daily life.
Right.
And so what I love doing and I tell people to do is like make a broth, do like a bone broth, add a bunch of mushrooms into it. So it's like mushroom bone broth, and
Mm-hmm.
then use that broth
Right.
for rice, for
Uh-huh.
anything that you would normally be using like water for that's becoming part of the dish. Have it be like a medicinal mushroom bone broth.
Broth.
Yeah. And so I really like to do that. It's like if you're making congee, then have that water be like mushroom bone broth.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's like that's really a good tip. I'll try that. I'll give that a try.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Uh, it doesn't even sound so strange. Just like yeah.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
is there anything that you would like to talk about, like or tell, like which we haven't discussed, or which you want to discuss more about?
I mean, that's a dangerous open question for the last few minutes of a podcast. Yeah, I think there's always so much to be discussed with mushrooms. I mean, the most recent paper that I wrote was on using mushrooms for like fertility and pregnancy and postpartum health.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's just like a really big interest of mine right now because it's personal to me and it's also something that I've just found there to be so much need for.
Right. Yes.
And so, yeah, I guess I can direct people to my my blog, my website to read that paper that I wrote so that they can gather more information about that, because I think that it could be helpful to a lot of people who may be trying to conceive or are experiencing a lot of like postpartum anxiety or insomnia. I think that mushrooms can play a big role in all of that most people don't really talk about.
Yeah.
And there's definitely like an epidemic of infertility happening. And yeah, knowing more about the natural support that's out there, I think can be helpful for people.
That's cool. That's cool. That's really good information, because I personally I get the feeling when I go on these forums and all, like many people who take mushrooms are doing it for, like, I don't know, I want more energy or some other issues, and then there's the clinical side, and there may be some people who don't even know, as you said, like women uh, who are pregnant, who want to conceive. They might not even be
Yeah.
thinking about mushrooms. Nobody must even be telling them. So it's like, it's
Yeah.
really cool that you like really talked about it. I mean, that's a very good answer to that dangerous open-ended question. uh, yeah, like this was a really informative talk, and there's a lot of things to like get in there and like unwind and digest. But for people who want to know more about your work, uh, where can they follow you? Yeah, if you can tell them, that'll be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So my website, drannasitkoff.com. And then lucidamedicinals.com, which there's also a link to that on my website. And there's a lot of papers that I've written about mushrooms. I'm kind of trying to transfer my Reishi and Roses blog to the drannasitkoff.com, but Reishi and Roses still exists. So if people want
Yeah.
to go to reishiandroses.com, that is there. If they want to follow me on Instagram, which I don't post super often, but there's also lots of information on there. It's just Dr. Anna Sitkoff.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I'll put all those links
Okay.
down. Yeah, with this video, and yeah, that was like, and yeah, people like definitely go read her blog, because there's like a ton of really awesome information out there. Like it's very scientific, very detailed, and most of all, we can like see your passion and enthusiasm for this whole field. But still, we thank you very much, like for coming on and giving us your valuable time.
Yeah. Thanks, Govind.
So, Dr. Anna Sitkoff, thank you very much.